The wind howled across the frozen highway the moment little Nora collapsed into the snow, her tiny gloved hands trembling as she cried that she had no one left. Beside her, Julia pressed a shaking hand to her mouth, fighting back tears of her own as the broken-down SUV hissed in the cold. It felt as if life itself had cornered them, stripping away warmth, safety, and hope all in one cruel winter morning. What neither of them knew was that this moment, this bitter, icy fragment of despair, was about to collide with the life of a man who had spent years building walls around his heart. And in the collision, everything would change. If you believe kindness and second chances can reshape a life, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. The day had started like so many others for Julia, who had been juggling 2 part-time jobs in Denver while trying to raise her 4-year-old daughter alone after the unexpected loss of her husband, Ryan. Bills stacked like angry reminders on the kitchen counter. The rent notice glared at her. And just when she thought she could handle no more, her car, her only means of getting to work, had sputtered and died miles from the nearest town while on the icy interstate. She remembered pulling over, smoke lifting from the hood, Nora waking from her nap only to burst into tears at the cold reality outside. As trucks thundered past, sending blasts of icy wind, Julia whispered apologies she had no power to fix. The weight of failure settled on her chest like lead. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian Cole, CEO of Cole Industries, a multi-million-dollar logistics empire, watched the snowstorm through his tinted office windows. He was known for control, precision, and an almost intimidating perfection. But what his polished exterior hid was the grief of having lost his sister years earlier, a pain he had sealed away with work and success. His life had become a fortress of purpose without passion, accomplishment without connection. He had not taken a single spontaneous detour in almost a decade. But fate, it seemed, was not asking permission. When his driver suggested taking a different route to avoid traffic and ice, Adrian agreed without thought. Minutes later, he spotted something that fractured his composed world, a young woman kneeling in the snow, holding a crying child while cars skirted dangerously close. Something inside him, something long dormant, flared awake. He ordered the driver to stop. The moment Adrian stepped out of the sleek black sedan, the cold hit him brutally, but it was nothing compared to the piercing ache he felt watching Nora cry. Julia looked up, startled and embarrassed, brushing snow from Nora's coat, her eyes red but resilient. She expected judgment, pity, or indifference. Instead, Adrian saw a reflection of the same helplessness he once carried in his own heart. Without hesitating, he removed his coat and wrapped it around Nora's small shoulders. That single gesture, simple, instinctive, human, broke something open in all 3 of them. Adrian arranged for a tow truck, then insisted they warm up in his car while they waited. Julia resisted, fearing charity, fearing dependence, fearing hope. But Nora was shivering, and the warmth inside the sedan felt like the first kindness offered to them in months. Once inside, Nora clung to Adrian's hand as if she had known him forever. She looked up with wet eyelashes and whispered that she was scared because Mommy has no one left. The words struck Adrian like a blow. For a moment, he couldn't speak. After the car was repaired, Adrian drove them home personally, claiming it was on his way. It wasn't. But as they rode through the storm, he listened to Julia speak about Ryan, about their once bright dreams, about the unexpected medical bills that swallowed everything, and the way grief had quietly shaped survival into the only goal. Julia wasn't asking for help, she never did. She spoke with quiet strength, even while her hands shook slightly in her lap. Adrian felt something he had not felt in years, the desire to step into someone's life not as a CEO, but as a human being. The next week, Julia was stunned when she received a job interview invitation from Cole Industries. She hadn't applied, yet her resume, sent weeks earlier to dozens of companies, had apparently surfaced. At first she didn't believe it, but the men interviewing her took an immediate liking to her sincerity, her experience, and her determination. Adrian was nowhere in sight. He had instructed the team to treat her as any other candidate. When she earned the position on merit alone, he allowed himself a quiet smile at his desk. Over the months that followed, Julia's life transformed. The steady income allowed her to secure a better apartment, childcare for Nora, and the beginnings of peace she once thought impossible. But it wasn't the job that changed her most, it was Adrian's subtle but unwavering presence. He respected her independence while offering guidance, encouragement, and the gentle reassurance she had long forgotten how to accept. Nora adored him. Every time she visited the office, she ran into his arms with the brightest smile. As seasons shifted and winter softened into spring, Adrian found he was no longer merely helping someone in need. He was healing too. Julia reminded him of compassion's quiet strength. Nora reminded him of innocence worth protecting. And together, they reminded him what life looked like beyond the cold walls of ambition. But the most defining moment came the day Julia received custody papers from Ryan's estranged relatives, people who had never visited, never called, but suddenly sought to remove Nora from her mother's care. Julia crumbled, fear ripping through her as she imagined losing the only person she still had. Adrian stepped in, not with money, but with presence. He held her trembling hands, guided her to legal support, and stood beside her through every terrifying step until the threat dissolved and the court reaffirmed what was always true: Nora belonged with her mother. That night, Julia cried into Adrian's chest, not from fear but from relief, gratitude, and something softer, something new and terrifying in its own way. Adrian held her tightly, realizing that he had once feared attachment, yet now the thought of life without them felt unthinkable. Months later, on a warm summer evening in Colorado, Nora tugged on Adrian's hand as they walked along a quiet lakeside path. She looked up at him with bright hazel eyes and asked if he would stay with them forever. Julia froze, her breath catching. Adrian knelt, cupping Nora's cheek as warmth filled his chest. He looked up at Julia then, his voice steady and honest, and told her that her daughter had spoken the very wish he had been too afraid to say aloud. And in that moment, under golden sunlight reflected over calm water, the girl who once cried that she had no one left suddenly had more than she ever dreamed. And Adrian, the CEO who once believed his heart had no room for anything but work, discovered that love had quietly rewritten his entire world. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more stories that bring hope into the world. Special request: comment below with what part of the story moved you the most.